Message from Starfleet Command, top priority.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 104, featuring the top 5 sports references. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Morehouse, and I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast. And tonight, TrekRanks is Sports Ball Central as we tackle the top 5 sports references with a crew of Star Trek fans that love both Trek and sports. And there's a lot of different ways to look at sports inside of Trek, which we're going to get into in a minute in our diagnostic cycle. But first, let's introduce our lineup for tonight's contest.
Impressive.
You're looking at a true sports aficionado.
First up, returning for the 11th time here on TrekRanks, it's our good friend, Jen Tift, Edith Quarks. Welcome back, Jen.
Oh, thanks. It's great to be here talking about 2 of my favorite things today.
Yes, Trek and sports. She is the co-host of Snap Trek, the most awesome other podcast out there.
Aww.
And our second guest is my oldest Star Trek friend. We've been friends now for like 30 years. He's a huge sports fan. He's a huge Trek fan. It's John Denniston, but you can call him the Denniston. That's what we all do. The Denniston. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Morehouse. I appreciate it. And let me just also add how thrilled I am to be sharing my first experience with Edith Quarks.
Yes.
Oh, thanks.
That
Appreciate
is
it.
awesome. I'm actually shocked that John listens to TrekRanks. But we have talked about it many times. I'm like, okay, I got to get you on then at some point. So if we're doing sports, like this is the perfect one. So John, ironically, I don't actually know your Trek origin story. I of course know how we met and how we got into Trek and watched it together, but what is your actual Trek origin story? And you are a completist, right? I'm almost sure of that.
I'm about a 90%ist.
Because there's some TOS. Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah, there's probably about, it's embarrassing to say there's probably about 20 TOS episodes that I have not watched, which you think your knee jerk is, well, why don't you just sit down and watch them? But there's just so much other Trek to watch that it's hard to get back into it. But I will get there eventually.
All right. Well, how did it start for you? I don't even know this.
Yeah. So Trek origin story. I've always been a science fiction fan growing up. I was never exposed to it as much. I grew up in rural Massachusetts, and so I didn't have cable until I got into college, which also shows how old I am. I was only able to watch sci-fi whenever I could. I was really big into this cartoons, Japanese style called Star Blazers. It had this, So it had the big battleship that flew in outer space, and it was actually a serialized cartoon, which I thought, interesting for that time and day. But so, I always watched like the movies, the Black Hole movie, all of this, and then obviously the Star Trek movies. So really got into it for the movies. And then getting into college is when Next Generation came out. So I remember watching the opening show in the lounge in my dorm, and getting excited about it. But once again, and I've heard this on other TrekRanks episodes, where you're in college, it's hard to really kind of get super into it. So I kind of dabbled in Trek. Obviously, like I said, I watched a lot of the movies, but it wasn't until I moved to Kansas City for my first job. And there's a guy I worked with there who was just a huge Trek fan. And that really just reignited the fire. And I started watching a lot more Trek. We would actually have marathons where we'd just sit down and watch Trek all day and come up with our own favorite characters. And he was actually the first one I went to my first Star Trek convention with William Shatner. So
I forgot about that. Oh my God.
Yeah. So there was, so that's what really kind of ignited it and got me into it. I've been to it ever since.
That was the one where the lady told me, we don't open the toys. I was standing at a table and I was kind of like looking inside this box, already kind of sheepish, and I was basically buying a little toy, and I'm 27 years old. Sir, we don't open the toys.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
that
God,
was funny.
it's embarrassing. Anyway,
yeah.
Okay.
And it's stuck with you.
It has. It scarred me. I felt like the whole convention was looking over my shoulder. It was a different time back then. Now it's like toys. Yeah. Yes, let's do it.
Right.
Okay, that is awesome, but I can't get out of that without saying Our Star Blazers. I love that show.
Yeah, that was so great with the wave motion gun.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Jen, do you know Star Blazers?
Sorry, nope.
Okay, it's actually like Battleship Yamato or something.
Yamato.
Yeah, it's a Japanese show. It's basically a battleship in space. It's pretty cool.
Sounds cool.
Okay, let's get into our TrekRanks recalibration.
Let's start with something small, like a recalibration of the EPS manifolds.
As regular listeners will know by now, general order number one of the TrekRanks charter is that we love Trek and we love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started. And remember, it's not about the ranks. That's just our excuse to talk about Star Trek. Because as Mr. Spock himself has said, our show is all about
infinite diversity in infinite combinations, symbolizing the elements that create truth and beauty.
No wrong answers, not about being right or definitive in any way. It's just about sharing the things we love about Star Trek, and we love it all. From TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery, Short Treks, Star Trek Picard, and Lower Decks as well. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a reminder that this episode of TrekRanks is current through 801 episodes of Star Trek, which translates to the third season of Star Trek Discovery. And one final note that we use episodes as a shorthand term, but the 13 films are always in play as well.
Have boosted power to the communications bandwidth.
And we appreciate that bandwidth boost, Mr. Kim. You can find TrekRanks on Subspace at TrekRanks.com. You can contact me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra. And you can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. All right, Jen and John, why don't you guys let everybody know how they can get a hold of you on Subspace? Jen.
Yeah, you can catch me on Twitter. I'm at Edith Quarks. And you can catch my podcast, which is Snap Trek. And that's also on Twitter at Snap Trek.
Lots of great Trek content there. John, tell them about your Twitter, but you need to tweet more about Star Trek, man.
Yeah, my Twitter is a little bit more Section 31 than not. I'm much more of a lurker on Twitter, but I am at the Deniston. Yeah, if you post some good stuff on Trek, I'll be more than happy to comment.
Okay, yeah, you are a lurker.
Yes,
in Section 31. Okay, let's get into our level 1 diagnostic to get into this topic.
Run a level 1 diagnostic series. Come.
So this week's diagnostic cycle is going to be a fun one. We've got 3 big sports fans here, and I want to get a little bit of insight and try and explain the allure of sports. And some of you may not be big sports fans. Some of you might be huge sports fans. I don't know. I know you're all Star Trek fans. Otherwise, you would not be listening to a podcast called TrekRanks. So Jen and John, a couple of quick questions. First for you, Jen. I want to hear what your favorite sport is. I think I know your favorite team. I also want to hear that. But I also want to hear your just quick synopsis on, hey, what is it about sports? Why are they, what's the allure?
Oh, that's an interesting question. My favorite sport is indeed NFL football. And I am a diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan. Live and breathe Philly sports, especially the Eagles. Yeah, as for the allure of sports, there's so much. I mean, God, we could just have the whole podcast about this.
I think it'll come up a lot in this podcast.
Yeah, it will. A lot of my picks go back to what I love about sports. But like you, Jim, I'm a stat person too.
Yeah.
So I love that aspect of it. I love analyzing every little detail, minute thing, anything that you can have a stat for, I'm there. I love watching sports. I love playing sports. There's just something about getting your adrenaline going.
And you've been into it your whole life?
Yeah. I've always been a sports fan. When I was young, I was more into the stats. That like I was one of those kids always like scribbling in a notebook, like going through all the stats for all the games, and just from there, I guess I got more into it. Started playing sports. It's hard to explain what it is. That's
true. Yeah,
a way to connect with people too. For me,
it's hard to explain why you care so much. That's that's going to be at the root of kind of my stuff here.
I mean, it's a good point too. I mean, why? Like,
who cares?
I'm not. I do.
I know. It's like there's another season, there's another game. Who cares? It matters.
It matters. Every game matters. My mood the next day depends on whether my team won or lost that day, and it's just it's devastating. It's emotions. It's passion. It's devastating when you lose. It's euphoric when your team wins, whether you're playing or even just watching. You know?
I think that that defined it well. If it is still super nebulous to why it affects us all. So, John, how about you? What's I'm curious what your answer is going to be, because I know you have a couple of passions here. But what's your favorite sport, team, and just what is it about sports for you?
Yeah, so probably my favorite teams right now is a lot of it's focused around San Diego State University. Yep. So that's really been my big thing, just following Aztecs football, Aztecs basketball, just being a super homer when it comes to that. But in terms of other sports, I like a lot of them. A lot of times for me, it's more about what's the new one that's coming up, or what are the playoffs. That's a big exciting thing for me. And that kind of lends into, what I like about sports is when, and it sounds a little bit strange to say, but when sports really matter, when you get into the playoffs, when you get into, World Cup qualifying, when there's something really on the line. The regular season, I mean, it's interesting to me, and it's a fun sort of diversion to kind of sit back, relax, and watch a game and kind of watch some of the strategies. But when there's something really at play, like, win or go home, that's when it's like it's thrilling to me. It's that excitement. I liken it to the reason why you appreciate any sort of drama, any sort of good television show or movie. When you're on the edge of your seat because you just don't know what's going to happen, but you've vested this time to watch it. And it's something that Jen said struck me. It's that passion. You get just completely absorbed and completely involved into it. And you're right. There is no rhyme or reason. Why do I care? Because the red shirts are beating the blue shirts. It doesn't, but there is something about it where you get yourself involved. You become part of this community. And, for me, it always goes back to also like, the old wide world of sports, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. It really ties into your emotions. So,
and that, I like what you said, that sense of community. That's a big part of it for me too.
Yeah.
I feel like when you feel like a part of something and, and everyone's feeling the same way you are, and you can share that, you can share the lows and the highs, and it's just special.
Thrill of victory, agony of defeat. That sums it up. So I was going to mention in kind of my little synopsis here, I'm a diehard Oakland Raiders fan, Los Angeles Raiders fan, Oakland Raiders fan, Las Vegas Raiders fan. I have been since before they ever won a Super Bowl in the 70s. I fell in love with them, and their highs and lows have, affected me since I was literally 7 years old. I can't even explain it. But the way I always tell so Nick Hornby is a very famous author that a lot of people know, High Fidelity, About a Boy.
Yeah.
But his first book was this tiny little book, 115, 20 pages that I read. I've read it 20 times, called Fever Pitch. And it's the first thing he ever wrote, and it's how he got famous. It defines perfectly how sports has affected his life. He's a huge Arsenal fan in England. And the synopsis of it is that he explains perfectly in this book how he knows that every single person in his life is affected when they see an Arsenal score, because they either feel bad for him or good for him. And in a real deep emotional way. And I'm like, I'm reading this book like this is me. I mean, like my whole family is like, shit, did the Raiders win? Okay, don't talk to Jimmy. The Raiders didn't win. It's literally
give Jim a day to decompress.
Literally to the point that like not 2 months ago, there was the bad Raiders loss, and my mom sends a text. My 88-year-old mom sends a text to my wife. Is Jimmy in his room till Tuesday under the sheets crying? I'm just like, she's trolling me. I mean, that's pretty much it. So anyway, I highly recommend Fever Pitch. It's the best definition of it for me. Okay, before we get out of the diagnostic cycle, it's debate time, Jen. We've talked about this a little bit. So
no.
a little bit of background for me in sports too. There's gonna be a lot of a lot of new information in this podcast, stuff I haven't really talked about in terms of my background and profession. So I've been working in sports professionally since I was 19 years old. So that's a long time. That's like 35 years. And I work in soccer, but the NFL is my love at this point. So when I looked at this topic, I really wanted to make sure we talk about what I think is a fun topic. It's sports versus not a sport, which John has heard me rant about many times, and Jen, we've had discussions about it. So here comes the fun debate on the sport or not a sport debate. I'm very staunch on the definition being editor's note. Jim and Jen just argued for 30 minutes about sports versus not a sports. We're going to cut that out. And Jen, you kind of know it about me.
Oh, I know it.
Oh, okay. All right.
You and I are assholes in the same way, so that's why we get along.
You win, Jen. Okay.
We all win. We're all split ends here.
We are. All right, let's get into our prime directives.
But what you're proposing is exactly the kind of tampering the Prime Directive prohibits.
All right, Jen, after all that, how did you define your prime directive in order to finalize your top Trek sports references?
Okay. Oh, well, Trek is my biggest fandom, or maybe sports is. These are my top two fandoms. So this is really, a special list for me. So I made it a real personal list too. So for my prime directive, I looked for places in Star Trek where Star Trek relates to sports in the same way I relate to sports. So there's going to be a lot of moments like for the love of the game moments.
Yep.
But also, like I mentioned earlier, it's bonding moments. People in Trek using sports as bonding moments, because that's really big for me. I have a hard time relating to people in general, and for some reason, it's just easier when there's sports involved. When there's a ball you can throw to each other, or whatever, or watching your favorite team together. Like for some reason, it's just easier for me to relate to people like that. So I really love seeing those moments in Trek. This was an accident. I didn't do this on purpose, but this is also how I relate to sports. 4 out of my 5 picks contain trash talking.
Oh, okay.
And I totally did not do that on purpose, but it's kind of perfect because
you're an Eagles
I'm a Philadelphia fan. Yeah. So that just worked out perfectly.
Okay, that is fantastic. I'm excited to hear that. My prime directive is nothing like that. John, how about you, man?
Awesome.
So for my prime directive, first and foremost, I wanted to start off with I just want to pick 5 episodes of Star Trek that I want to talk about. Now, I understand that Morehouse is thinking, well, that's every one of them. So how do you even do that? Yeah, but this will become a little bit more clear later on. So it's a little bit of a tease, but that was sort of like, all right, this is an episode I want to talk about. But then digging down into actual sports references, I really wanted the reference to have some sort of meaning, some sort of purpose, not just a throwaway reference or, hey, look, that person's wearing a particular outfit for a particular sport. I felt like it had to be somewhat reflective of the character or the characters or the crew. An example would be, hypothetically, if you just saw, Garrick running down to the holosuite to play badminton. It's like, okay, that's not anything to do with anything. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So I just wanted there to be some sort of significance, not requirement, but I wanted it to be, an element in the fabric of the story and the series that was referenced.
Okay, that also is nothing like my prime directive. I love this. So at first, I thought it was going to be easy because I really wanted to just make it all about sports that were made up for Star Trek. And when I say sports, I mean like actual sports, not like tabletop games or video games or card games or anything like that. And when I kind of put those qualifiers on, there actually are not that many. There's like a half a dozen legitimate references to made up sports in the history of Trek that kind of fit that criteria of not being like, Fizbin or Stratagem or something. So that was crazy to me. So I realized that wasn't really working. So I just went back to it and looked at kind of broader sports, but then I had a ton of qualifiers. So I had no board games, no video games, no card games, no racing sports of any kind. So sorry, Captain Freeman, I can't pick your hydro scoot exploits at the Academy. There's no fighting sports. I hate boxing and I hate wrestling and MMA. Sorry, not sorry. I just can't get into those. So no references to gambling. So there's no quaaludes. And then to make it even more crazy, I decided to have 5 different sports represented. Ooh. And then from there, I had some cool moments. I had some really, really tiny, small moments that are exactly what you were just talking about eliminating, John, that are on my list. I have some huge, big, epic ones that really measured Trek. And I also ended up with a split between real sports and made up Trek sports. So I had a ton of criteria on my list to kind of break it all down. And my last thing I'll say, because I got a lot of sports opinions, so apologies in advance for that. But there's one more thing I started with, and John, you'll appreciate this. I was going to eliminate baseball because baseball is not one of my favorite sports. Since I was a kid, I really didn't like baseball, which is sad for me because obviously it became so prevalent in Trek, and I've grown to appreciate it a lot more because of Star Trek, and they're using it in that space. So if at some point down the road, if we're ever in the same place, anybody listening, I have a quite a screed, 10-point screed about baseball, John, that you've heard many times.
Something about third-rate motor skills, something like that?
Yeah,
I've heard it.
Third grade motor skills.
Third grade motor skills, that's right.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I tune most of it out, to be quite honest.
As you should. So anyway, I did not eliminate baseball, and it did make my list somewhere. So, okay, there's a ton of ways to look at sports. This is going to be awesome. Let's get into it with First Kudecaton.
It'll be alphas like us that determine the future of this quadrant. That will be the new order of things.
Thank you, First Kudecaton. And as always, a reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, everyone will start with their 5-word summary and a hashtag to tease their pick. Then we'll each reveal our top 5 sports references in Trek and the specific reasons we're highlighting it. And of course, an episode that we think showcases that pick. And at the end, we'll ask everyone for some secondary systems picks for the sports that just missed our list. And as always, if you have any duplicate picks, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedoes. Okay, Jen, let's kick this off with you. What is your number 5 pick for your top 5 sports references?
All right, let's do this. My top 5 pick, the best that ever played, hashtag I know, I've played with them all. Hashtag GOAT. I have 2 hashtags for that one. This is Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 16, If Wishes Were Horses. This is
Buck Buckeye.
Buck Buckeye. I couldn't not have Buck Buckeye on my list. He's one of my favorite of the weird characters, of the obscure characters. He's one of my favorites. I love him so much. And this episode just is about the relationship between sports and the fans. Now, Sisko gets to meet Buck Buckeye, his baseball hero, Buck Buckeye hero, but it's not actually Buck Buckeye, right? It's an alien. It's the classic Star Trek, an alien testing humanity to see if they're ready kind of episode. But he took the form of Buck Buckeye, and it's cute. He comes out of the holosuite, and Jake says he followed me home. but the alien in Buck Buckeye's form is fascinating to begin with. He's really interested in why Sisko is so invested in Buck Buckeye and this man who played a game, 200 years ago. And he finds that fascinating. I think that, it's like that, that's a cool, unique thing about humans, that you could have an affection for someone you've never met. And he says, and he gets really into his persona. He uses bunch of sports metaphors. He says, it ain't over till it's over. And, we've learned that you can never tell how someone will treat the visiting team, trying to figure out the rules of your game, so he really gets into it, which is really fun. But the reason this made my list is because there's this lovely scene where they're it's Ben and Buck, and they're talking about Buck as a player and Sisko as a fan. And actually there's some trash talking here. This is the trash talking moment. Is Buck Buckeye, he talks about what if I don't just disappear? What if I'm around here forever? He says, you got room on your team for switch hitting third baseman with good power? And Sisko goes, good power from the left side.
That's right.
Which I love. And, then Buck's like, yeah, I hit over, 20 homers right-handed and whatever.
That's awesome.
And Cisco's like, yeah, never, not that much after that. And they have, they have that great back and forth about it. But it's also, they talk about the end of baseball.
Right.
And Buck says like how much it meant to him that Ben was cheering him on, during the last World Series. And Ben says, "You're the best that ever played. I know, I've played with them all." And he winks at him. And it's just such a great moment showcasing like that special bond between, the players and the fans and the team and the fans and the game itself and the fans. And I just love it. I love that about Ben. And I love that we have this character of Buck Buckeye, who's just like the sports hero. He's been mentioned in Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, and Voyager.
Wait, Next Generation too?
Yeah, well, not by name in Next Generation, but they talk about, the shortstop for the London Kings who broke Joe DiMaggio's record.
Oh, that's right.
And then they specifically took that line when they formulated the character
awesome.
Of Kai, which I think is cool. And then he's mentioned my name in Voyager too.
Yeah, I love how this pick fits so perfectly into your Prime Directive, and all the discussion we've had about our feelings for why sports matter. This pick summarizes it as good as any could. That's awesome. John, what's your take on If Wishes Were Horses?
This is a great pick. I will say this was on my secondary system. So I watched this just a few days ago to doing my TrekRanks homework. And Jen, you hit on several things that really struck it for me. The one thing that I also loved about it was how Buck, or the alien, we'll call him Buck for lack of anything better, but he kept calling him Ben. It was that friendly thing. He never called him Commander. He never called him Commander Cisco. He never said anything like that. It was always Ben. It was always Ben. It was always very friendly.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, I love the smile on Cisco's face when he fired off that good power from the left sideline. That was just the look on his face, because it was friendly banter.
Yeah.
And then the wink. Yeah, I put multiple exclamation points in my notes on that because of that wink. And I was watching it just wondering, it's like, was that in the script, or was that just Avery just having a blast and having fun with this guy?
Oh, yeah, that does sound like an Avery Brooks edition,
yeah, it felt like it. It didn't seem like it was appropriate, but I loved it. I thought it was great. And then, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention in that episode, you also got a Gunji Jackdaw running around the promenade, the emu ostrich-looking thing that somebody had gathered up in their imagination, which I thought was just a lot of fun.
That's right. Awesome summary. God, that's really, really good from both of you guys. What an awesome pick. Okay, John, how about you? What's your number 5 pick?
Okay, before I get to my number 5 pick, I need a little bit of background story on this one. So, as I think we talked about, I did work in professional sports. I worked in professional sports for about 4 years, 3 of them in Kansas City, as you know, Morehouse. And during my last year there, I was running around the stadium, driving my golf cart, probably dropping off water bottles or something stupid like that. And I was driving around trying to get back into the stadium. And as I was driving around, and I looked out to the parking lot, and I could see, a few cars were coming in and some people were tailgating out there. And I looked and I saw these 2 guys out there, and they were just sort of kicking the soccer ball back and forth to each other, not being competitive, not like doing, one-on-one, just kind of kicking the soccer ball back and forth with each other, beer in hand, just relaxing and enjoying the day before they were going to go in and watch the match. And I sat there for a second, I looked and I thought, that's what I like about sports. Not this nonsense, sweating, like crazy in the hot, summer Kansas City humidity. I like that. That's what I like about sports, hanging out with your buddies, just kicking the soccer ball and enjoying it and enjoying for what it is. So when Morehouse presented this topic to me, this was the first episode that popped into my head because of that. So my 5 words are bonding over sports and beer, hashtag Stanford versus Texas. And this is episode 21 of Enterprise Season 1, Vox Sola.
Oh, man, that's a great pick.
So the background on this was at the very beginning of this episode. This is when they were meeting with the Cretaceans, and they offended the Cretaceans, to an nth degree, and they had no idea why. I think it was you mate like you eat. And so Archer was just really in a downer mood, was just really upset. This first contact had gone completely poorly. We're still in season 1 of Enterprise, so this is one of the first contacts that they've gone through. So he's in his office and he's just stewing, in a really foul mood. And Trip comes by and he says, as the captain of the music, I wouldn't interrupt him. He's like, I'll take my chances. And he goes in and he's like, and he brings out the little memory card and he's like, look what I got here. And all of a sudden you see Archer's eyes light up, and it's the finals, the water polo finals that he's bringing. And Trip doesn't really know water polo at all, but he knows that his captain and his friend, is just in a down state, and he knows something that will cheer him up. And so what's he do? He brings out some sports, and they sit there and they watch a little bit later. They watch the match, the water polo match of Stanford versus Texas. Stanford, I believe, being Archer's alma mater. And they're sitting there with pretzels and beer and just watching the water polo, and Trip's starting to get into it, trying to figure it out. And, he even makes a reference to preferring football I think he says the off tackle out of the backfield. But then they also brought it forward in the message as both Trip and Archer were caught up in the alien webbing, for lack of a better term. So they were talking about how Archer in the playoffs against Princeton, they were 2 goals down with 1 minute left. And, he's like, and what was I thinking? And Trip's like, that you were going to win the game. You always thought you were going to win the game. And I just thought that was really underlining the Archer character and who he was as a captain. But then Trip sharing this moment with him was underlining Trip as a friend to Jonathan Archer. So
hold on, I need to go watch Vox Solo right now because that's awesome. I thought about water polo in different spots. I didn't think about this one. It's so purely sports. That's what it's all about. Jen, what's your take on this?
I could talk about it now, or we could wait till my next pick.
What? Okay, let's hold on then. That is amazing. So let me do this because your guys' 2 picks were awesome. This is the smallest, tiniest reference that's probably ever been a pick on TrekRanks. So I'll get this out of the way. My 5 words in a hashtag: baseball argument. Bashir prefers tennis, hashtag, and I prefer soccer. And the episode is Past Tense Part 2, Deep Space Nine. It's a really tiny moment, but as a soccer person in 1995, working in the sport, again, John and I worked together for 4 or 5 years in San Diego and Kansas City, and I have tracked every soccer reference in Star Trek. I did this long before Memory Alpha was a thing.
Love it.
There are 6. There's 6 official specific references to soccer in Trek now, which was always easy to count. Now I have to add on top of that everything with Rios from Star Trek Picard, because there's a million soccer references around Rios now. So outside of Rios, there were 6 soccer references, and this is one of the earliest ones. And this moment comes in the Sanctuary District when the administrative woman who had checked in Sisko and Bashir, and she's later taken hostage, and Bashir treats her hypoglycemia. They're all sitting around.
I appreciate that moment.
And this moment is also a Buck Buckeye moment, because basically what happens is that Vin and Bernardo, the 2 guards, are kind of arguing about sports, and Bashir chimes in and basically says, I don't know anything about baseball, I like tennis. And she just says soccer. That's all she says, 1 word, soccer. And I just love that. It always stuck with me for like 25 years, because for me, the timeline of it was amazing. I mean, at that point it was early 95, but now I look back on it and think, man, she was probably a huge U.S. women's national team fan, because at that point they'd won 1 World Cup. Now they would have won 4 by that time. She was sitting there being a soccer fan. And I just really thought that was cool. And I had a note in here that in terms of Star Trek predicting the future, this is an incredible moment here, because there's a reference to Vin. Basically, the argument is that Vin is saying the 99 Yankees were the best team ever. This was 4 years before the 1999 Yankees won the World Series by sweeping the Atlanta Braves. So I always thought that was really weird. Of course, the flip of that is that they said the team he was arguing with was the 2015 London Kings. So they didn't quite get that right. That was Buck Buckey's rookie season.
That's right. It was.
So super cool. And I'm just going to add one more note on this because as I was researching it, this blew me away, and I think Star Trek fans will appreciate it. The guy who played Bernardo in that scene is Al Rodrigo. Turns out he's got this huge voice acting career. Guess who he was in Lower Decks? Captain Durango from Moist Vessel, the Telluride captain.
Are you kidding me?
Unbelievable, right?
Wow.
That guy, the guard,
I had
security
no idea.
guard. I mean, who would know that? But the security guard in Past Tense Part 2 is Captain Durango from Moist Vessel. Crazy. All right, so that's just a tiny little soccer reference of many. Any quick take on that, John or Jen?
Well, yeah, I love them throwing the sports stuff in when they're in our time.
Right.
You know, like the way they anchor it to our time. Like that's a thing that, you know, sports was a thing, you know, now, quote unquote, and in the future. And I love when they play like that. And I like when they do always seem to manage to give other sports, you know, besides, you know, baseball, you know,
yeah, right,
a little bit of do, and I like that, and you're right, like soccer in that time. I was in high school, and our, you know, on the girls soccer team, and that it was like our first year that we had a girls soccer team, because I grew up in the Boondocks.
Soccer,
but like it. Yeah, but it was like big enough at that time that we could justify, you know, us having our own team, and you know, and so yeah, so it's a good moment. 90s were a good moment for women's soccer, and that's really cool that it was in there. That's it.
For any young U.S. soccer fans out there, trust me, you have no idea what it was like in the early 90s for soccer in this country. Come a long way. John,
I think I was gonna say, I think there was a football reference, right? Didn't they they thought that Cisco's a football player, and that's when he made the reference. Yeah,
that was before. That was when BC, the guy with the hat, said, "You would have been a good football player." That's right.
Yeah, he's like, no, I like.
I prefer baseball.
Yeah, I prefer baseball. Yeah, what I liked about that whole thing is the conversation aspect of it, right? You know, it's just something that you can talk about automatically, even if you don't know people that well. Do you talk about the weather? Or you just talk about sports, and I think that kind of gets back into that whole community thing that I was talking about. And how you can ingrain yourself into a community. You talk about sports. So I think it's a great pick.
Perfect example of that. So, okay, let's go to round 4. Jen, what's your pick?
All right. Finer points of the game, # beer and pretzels. And this is also Enterprise Season 1, Episode 22, Voxola. Oh, and John, you broke it down so well. There's not too much I can add to it. Just that this is a room I would want to be in. I would love to sit there having a beer, having some pretzels, watching the big game, you know, with my buds, and it perfectly captures. I love that sort of moment still happens in the future, you know, which is just really fun. And I love Trip getting into it, you know, after he learns the finer points, and he does some trash talking. Here's the trash talking moment in this one is Trip says, Archer, keep watching while Texas trounces your sorry California butts. Which is such a perfect Trip trash talk.
Question, Jen, do you think Trip watched the end of it? No, because that was always a question for me when I was watching it. Was he just tracking? Oh, yeah. Was he just trash talking, or did he actually just like, skip ahead a little bit?
No, you know what? I don't think he did. I think he was getting into it. So he picked a side because it's more fun to pick a side. And of course, it's more fun to pick against Archer so he could have some trash talk.
Of course.
Doesn't he also say something like, I had no idea there was so much strategy. I thought it was just 10 guys
playing around in the pool. And I love what you said. I just want to add, I love what you said at the end about Archer's character, because I picked up on that too. You know, Archer says, as soon as you give up, the game's lost. That defines that. Archer is relentless in everything he does, from season 1 through the end, he is relentless, and that's a perfect sports metaphor for that.
And I think it's also important to show that, they had this water polo reference, and they used it. I mean, he always had the ball in his office. Yes. He would, or in his ready room, and then he would throw it to people every once in a while. Right. And then he even had his little weekender bag. That was his water polo bag. Yeah. I like just those small little things to keep it, to keep that thread through the show. Like, no, this is legit. This is who Archer was. He loved his water polo.
Yeah, it's a hardcore sport too. I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would last maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah, treading water as far as that goes.
Yeah, forget it. So is that a sport, Morehouse?
I'm cutting that out, John. I'm cutting out the. There's no sport, not a sport conversation in any of this. I will say that my high school was like state champs water polo. We were. You guys had I grew up on an island, so.
You had a water polo team. We didn't even have a soccer team.
So I didn't know what water polo was in high school.
Exactly. All right, let's go to John's number 4 pick.
Okay, number 4 pick. This 5 words. Sports impacts in a blink. Hashtag don't tell me you're a Lakeside supporter. Oh, and this is, of course, episode 12 of Voyager season 6, Blink of an Eye. So this was a very, very small reference, but it really struck a chord with me because of the passion. I mean, I think the scene where they talk about Mountain versus Lakeside, and this was when the doctor went down to the weird planet that moved very fast, and so did the people who lived there, as Naomi Wildman wanted to name her paper. But, he was down there for, I think, a total of 3 years their time. And how did he get involved in that community? He started following sports, and he just got that immediate, the immediate passion of, whether he was Mountain versus Lakeside. And I just thought it was hilarious to me how passionate he was about it. That wasn't the hilarious part, but the fact that it's so arbitrary. And this goes back into the red shirt, blue shirt, Mountain, Lakeside. I mean, what's really the difference? But it mattered. It mattered to that community. It mattered to that society, and it definitely mattered to the doctor. I think his thing was like, if the original Torelius had gone 5 and 12, he would have self-isolated, or voluntary exile is what he said. So I thought it was just a great reference to kind of show that passion and how quickly you can get involved in it.
Incredible pick. This is one of my favorite references in that episode. One of my favorite episodes. It's a really pure soccer reference too, because this is about tribal football, European football, in England, and it's basically Mountain or Lakeside is code for city or united, basically, in terms of how cities or Rangers or Celtic, that kind of thing. So really, really awesome pick. I can't believe I didn't think of it because I love this moment. Jen, what's your take on this one?
I love this pick. I love this moment. This is my favorite episode. This was on my secondary systems. Yeah. It was hard to cut, but I love too how everything you said was spot on, John. But I love too how Daniel Day Kim like gives him the side eye when he asks him. It's like Mountain or Lakeside, like he's testing him. If you're really down there, you will have an opinion on this.
Yeah, exactly.
And you better have the right one too.
There was a smirk on his face for sure. Yeah.
It was so and then the passion, like the TrekRanks. And I also love too, there's always like the sports elders who are always like, I saw, such and such. I saw TrekRanks play live and whatever against what does he say? Like Red River or whatever.
Red River, yeah. That was the other one, which I thought was great. Another just random arbitrary name. Mountain, Lakeside, and Red River.
Right. Yep. Telling the youngsters about the sports triumphs that they witnessed back in the day, and it's just a delightful little scene.
The information I brought back is in Voyager's database. 7 of 9 has been trying to make sense of it. She'll welcome your assistance.
Mountain or Lakeside?
Mountain, of course. Don't tell me you're a Lakeside supporter.
You really were on the surface.
How are they doing this season?
Not good. 5 wins, 12 losses.
I don't believe it. Who's guarding for them?
Torelius.
Any relation to the Torelius?
His grandson.
I saw the original, defend for Mountain, in the playoffs against Red River.
That was before I was born.
He would have gone into voluntary exile after a 5-12 season.
This one's about pure sport because we don't know what the sport is.
Right.
All we know is it's a sport on that planet. So really, it's about what sports means.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's what sports means. Right.
Awesome pick, John. I can't believe I forgot about that one in all my research. Awesome job. Okay, my round 4 pick to close it out. Another tiny, small moment. It has nothing to do with anything, but I just love it because it's cool and I always think about it. It's a cold open. It lasts about a minute. Has nothing to do with the episode. 5 words and a hashtag. Game of cargo bay catch. Hashtag 50-yard pass with the flick of a wrist. And it is Enterprise Fortunate Son. And the opening moment of this episode, the cargo bay captain and his first mate are playing catch with a football across 50 yards of open cargo bay in a low grav setting right before the Nausicaans attack them. And I just love it. I think it's really cool. I'm always impressed by this scene because one thing that bothers me anytime sports are shown on TV is when you can tell it's fake and like the people can't actually, they're not moving right in terms of throwing or stuff. The dude who plays the captain, the older guy, is Charles Chip Lucia. He was also the Trabe jerk in Voyager's Alliance. This guy can throw a football. It's his arm motion is so impressive. Anyway, I wanted to talk about it because I just think it looks really cool. The effects are great with the football, and it's an old school football. It looks like a weathered NFL football, not like it doesn't have the white stripes on it like college football. I just love it. Jen, what's your take on this one?
My take is defying gravity's never been easier. Hashtag go long.
I can't believe we have another duplicate.
Oh man, this one always sticks with me too, Jim. I mean, you broke it down really well. I love this so much. Just the gentle toss. And you're right, he's got like the perfect form, perfect spiral. They just said gentle toss, and it goes the whole way across that big cargo bay, perfect spiral. And this was LeVar Burton directed this one.
He did, yes.
Really, but the thing I want to add about this is that I love this introduction to these characters. These are characters we've never met. This is a ship we've never seen before.
Yeah.
But we know so much about them because of this. We know that these are our people. These are Earth people. And they're doing what they're sharing this cultural touchstone, from Earth. They obviously have a sort of like a father-son relationship. I don't know if they are or not at this point, but just the back and forth. They pretend it's a real game. They do that, he's just like, touchdown,
Yeah.
They have trash talk in this one. It's he says, I'd like to see you make that catch with the gravity plating at Earth sea level. and the guy retorts back. He says, I doubt you could throw the ball 10 meters on Earth, but in friendly ways.
Hold down in the corner of the end zone. Touchdown!
I'd like to see you make that catch with the gravity plating at Earth's sea level.
I doubt you could throw the ball 10 meters on Earth.
One more reason not to go.
Did you find out what was causing that vibration in Module 2?
The cargo handlers at Jupiter Station, they didn't balance a load. Shaw and I, we trimmed it out.
Keep an eye on it.
Bridge to Captain Keen. We're under attack, sir. It's the Nausicaans.
Drop out of warp, charge a plasma cannon.
And I just love that they're showing us that these are our people. And then when they get attacked by Nausicaans, it's like, oh no. I mean, not that you wouldn't care if they weren't Earthlings, but it's just it's you're already like invested in this cargo ship. And I just love it. And it always sticks with me. It's just gorgeous too. Just the football going across the cargo bay is just gorgeous.
It really is. And you make I was dismissing it as kind of just a throwaway cold open, but you're right. It does kind of define these characters in a really clever way.
There's so much time to have dialogue when the football's in the air before you catch it. When you see a scene like that, on Earth, they have to like stop after a line because they're catching the ball. You get this whole thing of dialogue. They're talking about work issues.
I just need to give this actor Charles Chip Lucia props again because this guy definitely played football when he was younger. His throwing motion is beautiful. It is gorgeous. John, what's your take on Fortunate Son, another duplicate?
I mean, you guys really hit it with the visual aspect of it. I mean, it is just, it draws you in from the get-go in just being able to watch that. But I also think it aligns really well with the whole Boomer storyline. in terms of, these guys are out there, for months and years on end. So what are you going to do with your time? There's only so many books you can read. You've got to be able to come up with some sort of activities, and sports is it. And that's a nice way to do it. It kind of gets into that casual. You still get a little bit of exercise with just sort of flicking the wrist, but it's more the downtime. It's the relaxation. And for these types of long, voyages, you need something like that. And it shows how the boomers kind of to stick together, and that's how they do that. They bond over sports. So yeah, I think it's a perfect pick.
I love it. So we have accelerated into the soup round. It is John's pick, third round. What do you got, John?
Eat your soup, courtesy of a loyal establishment. Jolan True.
All right, soup round. So 5 words: sports forges the crew together. Hashtag this feels like an Octron fertility contest. And it is episode 7 of Enterprise season 4, The Forge.
Yes.
So yes. So this one is where I bend, but don't necessarily break my prime directive, because still it falls under the category of it's an episode of Star Trek I kind of wanted to talk about. But really, it's at the beginning of this. This is the crew of the Enterprise is in the launch bay, and they're playing basketball, and they're just, enjoying their downtime. They've introduced Phlox to the game, who's just picked it up in a heartbeat, and Hoshi laments like, we need to switch teams because he's just way too good. So I thought it was just a fun moment to show how the crew kind of takes some downtime. They're doing, making good use of the launch bay. Once again, on these long voyages, it's nice to be able to have some downtime.
That's another game. 21-2.
Time to switch sides again, Doctor.
Certainly. This is the most enjoyable sport. Reminiscent of Octron fertility contests.
I'm good.
Captain, I've just spoken with Starfleet Command.
Except we're fully clothed, which is probably for the best.
And then obviously the Octron fertility contest reference from Phlox, except now they're all fully clothed, is very funny. But so now this is where you get your classic Denniston overanalyzation. So you're going to have to excuse this bit. So as I watched the rest of this episode in my research, I realized that the rest of the episode.
By the way, those of us who know Denniston refer to it as the DOA, the Denniston overanalyzation. So
yes, it's a classic DOA here.
This is the thing; it's a DOA coming.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's taken this long to come up. But
I totally see why you guys are friends.
Yeah, so the entire episode is basically analogous to sports. We've got a beginning and an end where Archer and T'Pol have to traverse the entire forge. They have, they have to drink all this water. They have the first obstacle of all of this just oppressive heat, and they have to, do through this. And then another obstacle comes up with the Sealot, and they have to kind of hide and cower from that. And then they get an assist from the other Vulcan. I can't remember his name. So he comes and scares the Sealot. Irif, yeah. So he scares the Sealot off, and so they continue on this journey through this fight, through this battle. And then they have the sand firestorms that they kind of have to, find some refuge from. So, and then they finally, eventually reach their goal. So to me, watching the episode, it just felt like this is a sports match. This is, a test of endurance. This is a test that you would see in sports. So I felt like it still fit. It fit across multiple. I could have just gotten with the basketball and moved on to number 2, but I felt like talking through all of those, the test of physical strength and Archer constantly drinking water, which you would do in any sort of sports match, I think really fit in. And then of course a special shout out as they're in the cave, hiding out from the sand firestorms. What do? They eat soup. They have it's kind of more gruel. It's a little bit more gruel than anything. But you know what? It was a bowl. It was a spoon. That's soup. So,
okay, this was on my secondary systems. I definitely considered it. I love that DOA over analyzation. I just for me, the only reason I was going to pick this is because it's just cool when Phlox is just throwing balls into the hoop from every angle, just without even thinking about it. So clever. I love it. Jen, what's your take on basketball in the Forge?
Great pick. I love that. And it's not overanalyzing to me. That's the best thing about talking about Star Trek to me. But it was such a great breakdown. And yeah, that moment's so much fun. I love that because that's a thing too. When you're there's always someone who's either like way more talented than everyone else, or just different, or just different. If you don't have an even number, and there's always, so you have to switch off, between games and stuff. And that's such a thing that happens when you have pickup games. And so it's a lot of fun to see. The Star Trek version of that is because he's an alien who's just naturally really good at this sport. And then, of course, like you mentioned, just picturing a fertility contest. That's some kind of naked space basketball. It's just a funny thing. So that's a great pick.
That analogy with them in the Forge and perseverance in sports. Awesome. I love that pick. And yeah, Jen, you were just talking about trading off. That's going to be part of my round 3 pick here for the soup round. 5 words and a hashtag. Starbase 74 is going down. Hashtag. You have the perfect number. And the episode is 11001001 from TNG, and it is the first ever reference to Parisi Squares, a sport that I love. It's very high on my list of things that we've never seen in Trek. We've only heard it referenced that I really want to see at some point. Maybe that'll be a TrekRanks topic down the road. Everything about this sport sounds awesome to me. It's physical. You have these padded uniforms. It's a team sport, which I prefer. There's substitutions. You play on a court. My hashtag there was Riker comes along to Worf and Tasha and her team. They're going to go play Starbase 74 in a game. And they're like, you should come play. He's like, no, you have the perfect number. She's like, we can sub in and out. He's like, no, that ruins it. That makes it terrible. There's a ramp in this game for some reason. No idea what that is about, but that happens in one of the references. We have no idea if it's balls or rackets, or I've always kind of have pictured it as some kind of capture the flag type game. I have just no idea what the equipment is for this thing, other than the crazy outfits that Yar and Natasha and Worf are wearing. So it's been referenced in about a dozen episodes of TNG and Voyager all over the place. And that one, of course, they're going to play a game with Starbase 74, which shows that sporting community that the Enterprise come into town, and Starbase 74 is immediately challenging them to a game of Parisi Squares. And Worf's like, we're going to kill these guys. Riker's like, no, it's a friendly game.
We've been challenged to a friendly game of Parisi Squares by some of the maintenance personnel. Want to join us on the Starbase?
You've already got all the players you need.
Oh, we can switch off.
Now, if you do that in Parisi Squares, you lose the rhythm of the game.
I can't talk you into coming with us.
No, to win, all right? The pride of the Enterprise goes with you.
Rest assured, Commander, we will be victorious at whatever the cost.
Worf, it's just a game, a friendly little competition. You work up a sweat, you have a few laughs, and you make new friends.
If winning is that important, then, Commander, why keep score?
And there's other references too. The Doctor's holographic daughter died playing in real life, and I love that Riker's. There's one time where Riker is admonished by Dr. Crusher for playing like he's still 21, which I can totally relate to as an old man still trying to play sports. And then the flip of that, where Riker finds out that Jean-Luc and his son in Future Imperfect is playing, and he's like, "What? You're too young to play." Anyway, I just love Parisi Squares. Every reference to it. I'm thinking this one might be a duplicate at some point, but I'll be interested to see if it comes up again. Jen, what's your take on Parisi Square?
I am obsessed with Parisi Squares. I want to see that so bad. I want to go to a match game, whatever. I don't even know what they call it. But yeah, like you mentioned, the capture the flag. I picture it in my head the same way, but like American Gladiators capture the flag, kind of.
Right, it's an American Gladiators capture the flag. Right.
And I just want to see it. It's so dangerous. It's like every time they reference it, it's in a dangerous way.
Yes.
Like which is like what is going on? Like, because they're not like particularly padded out, you know.
Well, they had that huge like leather padding on their left arm, and so there is something there.
What
but
is that for? And they have mallets too, don't they?
Oh, do they have mallets? Maybe I missed that.
I know I might be conflating.
I just remember being thrown off by the ramp. They're like Crusher's like he fell off the ramp or something. Like, what's a ramp doing in there? What is that about?
Oh my gosh.
John, how about you, man?
I mean, the continuity for Parisi Squares is awesome. And honestly, Morehouse, you and I have talked about Parisi Squares forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we pretty much, any sort of generic sport is, we're just going to make it Parisi Squares.
Yeah.
That's really it. Because, to your point earlier, not really sure what it is. So who's to say that, what you come up with isn't necessarily true? I mean, who's to say that, maybe the ramp is only, in beta quadrant rules. Who knows?
Who knows?
We just don't know.
It could be.
There's different. Yeah, but I do love the thread and the fact that they use it so often. It's got to be one of those things that, you're in the writer's room and somebody throws out Parisi Squares and the room probably erupts. To that end, I'm surprised there's not more references. It should be out there like this great unknown, and it keeps getting brought up.
Voyager did us a favor on that. They referenced it like a dozen times. Yeah. So I don't think Deep Space Nine never did, though.
Lower Decks needs to hit Parisi Squares. That's got to
because they could do it. No matter if it's like gravity defying or whatever the sport is, they could make it happen.
Oh my God,
animation.
that's so true.
I would die if there was a Parisi Squares episode.
I wonder if there was. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Parisi Squares uniform somewhere in the background in Lower Decks, and we haven't caught it yet. Who knows? Okay, let's go to round 2. Jen, what's your number 2 pick?
Okay, 5 words and a hashtag. There's no I in Borg. Hashtag team player. And this is Voyager Season 4, Episode 26, Hope and Fear. Janeway and Seven play Velocity.
This is on my secondary systems. I love this pick.
This is great.
Velocity happens to be my favorite made-up sport in Trek.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is the sport for me.
So cool. It's so cool.
It's racquetball mixed with skeet shooting mixed with dodgeball. I just love it so much. I love everything about it. I want to play.
Oh my God, that's a great analogy. I hadn't thought of those three. It is like so racquetball, skeet shooting, and dodgeball combined.
Oh, I love it. And Seven gets completely like flummoxed that Janeway's beaten her. She's she's with her superior visual acuity and stamina. She says, but then Janeway talks to her about it. She's like, this is a game, not just of that, but of wits and intuition. She says.
Yeah.
And later on in the episode, Janeway uses that human intuition, to realize that there's something fishy going on with the situation.
Good game.
For you.
Oh, come on, Seven. You won 4 out of 10 rounds. Nothing to be ashamed of.
On the contrary. I have superior visual acuity and stamina. I should have won every round.
Well, Velocity is more than a test of stamina. It's a game of wits.
You are a frustrating opponent. During the final round, after you dropped your phaser, you did not even look at the disc, and yet you were able to acquire the target.
Intuition.
Intuition is a human fallacy. The belief that you can predict random events.
Oh, belief had nothing to do with it. At some level, conscious or otherwise, I was aware of several factors. The trajectory of the disc after I hit the wall, the sound it made on its return, and the shadow it cast on the hologrid.
Intriguing, but implausible.
I won, didn't I? Thanks for the match.
I wish to play again.
Not today.
You are fatigued and concerned that I will defeat you.
Tired, yes. Concerned, no.
Computer, begin first round.
Belay that command. Seven, try to be a sport. Game's over.
There's this is bookends for the episode.
Yep.
It's the cold open and the final scene, and it's also the season finale. And this is the first season with Seven. This is Seven's journey through the whole season, where she's trying to decide whether she wants to embrace her humanity or do something else or whatever. She's going through this like crisis, but it's also like a rebellious teenager phase. Which is kind of funny the way they play it throughout the episode. Her and Janeway have these mother-daughter moments almost. And here too, like I love that they gave them a sport situation to bond over, to talk things through while they're playing. I love that they did it that way, and phrase it in a sports way. And she finally decides that she wants to keep exploring her humanity, and that's the end of her journey from in just one season. She went from Scorpion, like to this, and it's just has any character ever had that big of a change in one season. I don't know, but what a fun way to end the season of her playing a human game with her surrogate mother in the holodeck. And I love it. And there's trash talk in this one too. And it's very seven-ish trash talk. She wants to play again because Janeway beat her. And, she's like, one more game. And Janeway's like, nah, I can't, And she goes to try to get her to convince her to play one more game. She goes, "You are fatigued and concerned that I will defeat you."
Yeah, that's right.
So like, come on.
Actually, Janeway's like, you lost, game over, or something like that, right? So good. So good. This pick is...
Yeah, she's like, be a sport or something.
Yeah, this is an amazing pick. It's definitely one of the best made-up sports and how they... showcasing how it's played and what the scoring is. My favorite thing about it is when she wins a point and the computer's like, full impact, point, yes! Janeway. I'm like, full impact. I love made up sports terms like that. Yeah, she got full impact.
Full impact. Final round to Janeway. Winner, Janeway.
Good game.
Yeah, you can like versus like grazing her shoulder or something, it's like right. Maybe you get more points for the full impact,
And I said this before that I hate it when it looks like people are not playing the sport right, when they can't quite make it. Like, I'm not a big fan of Friday Night Lights. I know it's a very popular show, but all the football looks fake to me. Yeah. And I can't get past that. This looks, they are rolling around, hitting, the angles are right. I mean, full credit to Jerry Ryan and Kate Mulgrew in terms of them rolling around, playing velocity. Love this. John, what's your take?
Yeah, Jen, you really hit on a lot of the things that make this episode special. And really, it is that relationship between Seven and Janeway. It's something that as you watch, and I'm going through another Voyager rewatch right now, just to see that progression as she does become more human. And what's a better way to help Seven, learn more about humanity than sports and taking part in sports. And, to her point, she's learning some things. There are some lessons learned. As you said, Seven is better. She should be beating her. But Janeway is just the crafty old veteran and the young up and comer trying to knock down the captain. It's a great story, and it's a great way to showcase that relationship between them. So love this pick. Love watching that.
Fantastic. All right, John, what's your number 2 pick?
All right, number 2 pick. This one is a little obvious, but I did it anyway. 5 words, sports analogy for the prophets. # not worth playing if we knew what would happen. Yes. And it is episode 1 of Deep Space Nine, season 1, Emissary. And specifically, this is when Cisco is talking to the prophets and really trying to understand and trying to explain to them what corporeal life is really all about. Then they get to that one scene where they're on the baseball diamond. And so then Cisco uses that opportunity to talk about it. This is baseball. It's a competition. It's for fun. But then explaining the rules of baseball and how everything is linear. I think he says, I throw this ball and 100 different things can happen in a game. You have to set a strategy for all the possibilities that might happen. You throw one pitch after another and you have to see what happens after that. And then, the prophets are still just not understanding it. Yeah. And, one of the lines that really hit home for me was, when Cisco says the game wouldn't be worth playing if we knew what was going to happen. And to me, that underlines everything about sports. I know some people who can, record games and go back and watch them just to enjoy the games and so forth. But for me, I have a real hard time doing that because I can so easily find out what just happened. So for me, that was really a nice underlining way to bring sports into this conversation. And I also thought it was a nice way to introduce baseball into Deep Space Nine so that it made more sense as that theme just continued on throughout the series with the baseball on his desk, and even the baseball when they had to evacuate. And obviously, throughout the series, there's all the different baseball references we talked about if wishes were horses earlier. So yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a really genuine way of bringing sports into Trek.
Well, you can't summarize any better than that. First off, I'm just thrilled somebody made this pick because it definitely was my toughest cut, wanting to include it because it's such a critical moment, not only for what it says for Deep Space Nine and sets up Sisko's character, but just in terms of defining sports and what they mean and what life is. It's just sports is life. I mean, it's really incredible the way Sisko explains it. And this is when I talk about my appreciation for baseball increasing. This is Exhibit A, because this scene is absolutely amazing. Hearing him the way he talks about the sport, pitch after pitch, and all these different things that can happen. I just love that. It's really, really smart. Awesome pick. Jen, what's your take on Emissary? It's linear in baseball.
We can talk about it later.
Okay. I was wondering which way we're going to go in that round one for some big picks that are still out there. Okay, let's go to my round two pick. This one was on my secondary systems for the longest time. And at the last minute, I just realized I need to move this onto my main list because it's one of the most common sports references in Trek, but I think it kind of slips past people a little bit. You don't always notice it. And as I thought about it and wanted to include it, and then as I researched it, I was like, wow, this is all over the place. So my 5 words and a hashtag are 2 favorite quotes referencing this sport. 5 words: indoor hoverball, that's just wrong. Hashtag, I fear I have yet to master the art of hoverball, so it would seem. And my episode is from Deep Space Nine. It's Let He Who Is Without Sin, a garbage episode of Star Trek that we've talked about many times on TrekRanks. But the sport is hoverball. And we first see it in Captain's Holiday, where you actually see this little mechanical hovering ball fly in. It looks like basically the Star Wars training ball for the lightsaber in the original Star Wars, and it floats in on Picard, who's trying to relax, and that's when the woman from Ryza says, I fear I've yet to master the art of hoverball, and Picard says, so it would seem. So I love that line.
Return. My apologies. I fear I've yet to master the art of hoverball.
So it would seem.
So that's the only time that we see the ball, but after that, hoverball is referenced like 10 times throughout Trek. It's mostly in Voyager, where it was like 7 times. Here's all the references. B'Elanna played it, Chakotay played it, Paris and Harry Kim played, the Doctor played, Janeway played, even Barclay played hoverball. They all reference it at some point. Everyone on Voyager has played it. I have no idea how to play it, but I was always intrigued. And I just love this reference from Quark because this is a pure sport moment for me. That basically it's raining and everybody's miserable on Ryza, and the Vanessa Williams character is trying to. We're organizing some hoverball, and Quark says, in the rain? She's like, no, on the indoor court. He's like, indoor hoverball? That's just wrong. And that is a pure sport moment. There's that elitism that so many of us have for certain ways of sports. Perfect sports tone and line and delivery from Quark. So I picked hoverball because it's one of these made-up sports that is referenced so often. Jen, what's your take on hoverball?
Oh, that's a great pick. I mean, what a perfectly futuristic made-up sport. You know?
Yeah, right.
It's a ball, but it hovers.
Exactly.
It's got future tech in it. And you don't need anything beyond that because you can, extrapolate from what you know about sports and ball sports, like what that might mean, and it could be so many different things, just a ball that hovers. There's so many different sports you could create in your mind with just that information, so it's just really clever. And and you're right, it's a fun way. So many people have played it. It's a really fun way to show, like that they're all, connected in the same culture.
Yeah. I mean, literally there's like 9 characters on Voyager that are referenced for having played hoverball. And, you got to play on outdoor courts. I mean, come on. This is hoverball, people. You can't play indoor hoverball.
Heathens.
John, any quick take on hoverball?
Yeah, I mean, I love the thread because it is mentioned so often, and it becomes, just part of it, so that you hear references to it and you know what it is, but then it takes you a second and you think, I don't really know what it is.
Right.
I've never actually seen it, but obviously I've heard it so many times in Trek that it just feels like it is part of me. I will say I'm going to give a jump in a little bit. I was all excited when you mentioned the episode title of "Let He Who's Without Sin," because I'm
going to get to that. I'm going to get to that.
All right, pause.
Oh my God. One last thing on hoverball. It's crazy to me that the very first reference, you see the ball. But ever since then, it's only ever referenced. So I just thought that was interesting too. Okay. We are in round 1, and we still don't have a Take Me Out to the Holosuite pick. This is fascinating to me. And it doesn't sound like Jen's going that direction. No. So Jen, what's your number 1?
My number 1, fire up those torpedoes again. Yeah. My 5 words in a hashtag, though, are any given linear time increment, hashtag the ultimate sports metaphor. And this is D Space Nine, season 1, episode 1, Emissary.
Love it.
Explain linear time and ultimately what it means to be human to the wormhole aliens using baseball analogy. And yeah, and you said it, John, like I don't really have much to add to what you said. You broke it down so well, but it's so Star Trek. The scene is just so pure Star Trek. And Sisko's speech, he starts off, explaining baseball and linear time. But then when he extrapolates it even further towards what it means to be human, is some of Sisko's best lines, best speeches. He's the wormhole alien that's Jake is, says you value your ignorance of what is to come, and
Right.
he's like, that might be the most important thing to understand about humans. He talks about how that means that we're explorers and that we value the unknown and we use our experiences and what happens to try to make educated guesses about what's going to happen. And sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. And that's just part of what it is to be human. And it's one of my favorite speeches in all of Trek.
The rules aren't important. What's important is it's linear. Every time I throw this ball, 100 different things can happen in a game. He might swing and miss. He might hit it. The point is, you never know. You try to anticipate. Set a strategy for all the possibilities as best you can. But in the end, it comes down to throwing one pitch after another and seeing what happens. With each new consequence, the game begins to take shape.
And you have no idea what that shape is until it is completed.
That's right. In fact, the game wouldn't be worth playing if we knew what was going to happen.
You value your ignorance of what is to come?
That may be the most important thing to understand about humans. It is the unknown that defines our existence. We are constantly searching, not just for answers to our questions, but for new questions. We are explorers.
I think about this speech a lot. You mentioned Take Me Out to the Holosuite. And I always think about that speech when the part in Take Me Out to the Holosuite, when he's sitting in the stands and with Rom, and that funny bit happens where Nog doesn't know who to tag out.
Right.
And he finally gets him and you're out. And the glee on Sisko's face, and he's like, see, that's what I love about this game. You never know what's gonna happen.
Yep.
And I just always takes me back to Emissary, to the 7th season, and him, to give to a character who ends up existing outside of time, to frame it in the sense of the unknown, the unexpected, you never know what's going to happen. And he ends up out as a character outside of time, in the wormhole. So
I never thought of that.
Comes full circle.
That's powerful.
I love that pick.
That's incredible. I mean, if there's ever going to be a pick that deserved to be a duplicate, it's Baseball in Emissary, because it defines the whole series. I mean, it's incredible. And I'm so glad you brought it around to that Take Me Out to the Holosuite moment, because it really is a bookend for it when he says, see, that's what I love about sports. All right. Any final comments there, John?
I was going to say something, but I actually really liked what Jen said with how he ended up as, this non-corporeal being. So I'd like to leave it at that.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Let's go to your round 1 pick, John. What do you got?
My number 1 pick, 5 words, 7 delivers small sports score. Hashtag the Yankees in 6 games. And of course, it's episode 8,
Yes.
Voyager season 6, one small step.
You are the man. What a pick.
This is a pick that I honestly, I wasn't sure if I was going to put it on the list because I every time I watch this, I almost come to tears. It's just heartbreaking. I mean, not only this excitement of finding the Ares 4 spacecraft, but watching the development of Seven from the beginning of the episode to the end. You know, she gets voluntold to go on this mission. She gets voluntold to do all these different things within it. And she starts listening to Kelly, John Kelly, and just seeing the look. And Jerry Ryan nails it in terms of her acting and how she changes as she starts to listen and starts to learn more about Kelly and his love. And it's amazing to me because they started off with, as he's talking to his other astronauts down on Mars, they start talking about the World Series, and there's some great trash talk in that about the Yankees and the Kings and that. And I think that was great. And then near the end, as the last, couple of log entries for Kelly, he's going through all of these different things. He's starting to realize that, all right, this is the end. I'm not making it out of this. I'm going to cut life support. I'm going to run the imager as long as I possibly can. I'm going to continue trying to capture as much data. I'm going to make one final burn. He's doing all of these things. And then he's just one regret. And then he never found out who won the World Series. And then listening to Seven deliver that line at his funeral was just absolutely a tearjerker. And then it was a nice subtle nod when you see Tom Paris kind of look up and acknowledge that he heard what Seven had said. So that to me brings out the passion of sports and how it's so contagious and how Seven got caught up in all of that. So.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, what a pick. This was on my secondary systems. I almost included it. I'm so glad you picked it. It's honestly one of the most emotional moments in all of Trek. I love it. It's a heartbreaker. Jen, what's your take on One Small Step and Seven?
Yeah, same here. I don't have anything really to add. You broke it down again so wonderfully, and it's such a what a way to end an episode. To just put a stamp on this, this character that we only knew for the one episode. I wanted the Yankees to win. I hate the Yankees.
I know, right? I know.
Me too.
Right. But also like you said, about it also shows something about Seven. That she could come to care about this person too, and about the seemingly arbitrary sport. Quote unquote.
Yeah, that she knows nothing about.
She knows nothing
right?
about,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. Oh,
amazing.
What a great pick.
Well, let's do this. So we're not going to have any picks from Take Me Out to the Holosuite, which is definitely a surprise. But our round one is going to be all baseball. And mine is also similar to yours, John, in that it's the final moments of an episode. And it is a absolute tearjerker, at least for me. I find it amazing. My 5 words and a hashtag. One Negro League Baseball cap hashtag. The G stands for the Grays, and the episode is from Deep Space Nine Season 4. It's Starship Down. The sport is baseball. Again, I'm not a huge baseball fan, but the soft, joyous, simple moment in this final scene between Cisco and Kira is everything to me. I love this episode. It's basically the moment is when Kira has been with Cisco while he's been injured and talked him through his injury and helped him survive. And she's talking about all these personal things to him and how she reveres him as not only a friend, but as this godlike figure, the emissary. And at the very end, he says to her, "Would you like to go to a baseball game?" And he throws the cap to her. She catches it. And when she puts this cap on her head, the smile on her face, I mean, it makes me want to just bawl. It's absolutely one of the most heartfelt moments in all of Star Trek. It's the best ending. And she's just so excited to be invited to a baseball game. He says, "We can get the hot dogs from Quark's and I'll meet you there." He puts on his Pike City Pioneers hat. I love this moment. It's a great episode, one of my favorites that I've picked many times on TrekRanks. But just hearing Avery Brooks or Ben Sisko say to Kira, would you like to go to a baseball game? And that smile on her face. It just kills me. Yeah, that's my pick. Jen, what's your take on this scene from Starship Down?
What a pick. I agree with everything you said. It's so, I can't even relate to Kira having this man be ostensibly her boss and ostensibly a religious figure, and she's really obsessed with her religion. You know what I mean? Like this is huge.
Right.
And the whole episode is the conflict with that. But so I can't imagine like the joy that she must be feeling, like to be included in this this acceptance, from this man that holds so much different types of significance to you. Again, sports. That's how Sisko shows affection and shows that he cares about Kara. Like that's
right.
It's a big deal for him to, invite her to see a baseball game, because that's something that's very special and important to him. And the deepening of the relationship in this final scene, it's gone from, I think Sisko realizes more like that he has to be cognizant of the fact that he has dual meanings for her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And making her a third thing, a friend,
right,
in this moment. And it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous moment. Gorgeous scene. Perfect pick.
John, any take?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, obviously I just watched the series premiere in Emissary, and watching the relationship between Sisko and Kira. And this is, clearly a milestone moment. And Jen, you really put it well, because it wasn't just, Sisko inviting Kira in, or Kira, accepting this invitation from Sisko. It's this symbiotic relationship between the two of them, and how they're becoming more and more accepting of each other, and how that relationship is evolving and developing and growing, and becomes, by the end, one of the strongest relationships in all of Trek. So to know that this was one of those moments that really brought that forward, a fantastic ending to that episode, and a great number one pick.
Yeah, cool that those last two were literally the ends of really emotional big episodes. I love it. Okay, let's get into some quick secondary systems.
Let's see what you can do with the secondary systems.
Jen, anything on your list?
I have to talk about the Giscana match.
Oh, yeah.
I have to mention it. It's not on my list. It didn't make my list because I really don't have anything intelligent to say.
Well, listen, one of the best things about Giscana and Desert Crossing is how realistic it is filmed.
Yes.
I mean, it looks like there's 10 guys playing space lacrosse. It's really awesome. It's really well done.
It is. And it's interesting, too, the way that the goal is so small. It's cool. A low-scoring sport, but it's like seems very like hardcore to play. And there's other reasons.
Love it. I don't know what those would be, so continue.
My brain has turned off right now. I have nothing to say intelligent about that. I also had a scene in Voyager's Critical Care. This is in the beginning where
hockey.
Paris and Kim were playing hockey, and Kim gets a shiner, they say, from a high-sticking Nausicaan in the holodeck.
Right.
And the thing that I love about this is they have to make up a story, because the doctor doesn't like violent sports. He's gonna get, they're gonna get crap from the doctor.
Yep.
And I love hockey. I also had, we should talk about Take Me Out to the Hollows.
Yeah, I mean, that's just all encompassing for Manufactured Triumph. So,
here.
the whole episode is
best line.
The whole episode is pure sports, especially Manufactured Triumph, because we've all done that, where it's just like you just create your own narrative, and that's the ultimate trash talking when the other guy can't get to you, and you're just like, sorry, Manufactured Triumph, we won, even though we scored 1 point. Yep, so good.
There's also a great realization in that episode of, how Sisko was so hell bent on beating the Vulcans. and then he, finally, and that's when he, pulls Rom out, but he then finally kind of gets the error of his ways, no pun intended. And, Rom ends up winning, getting the bunt and so forth. And finally, it opens Sisko's eyes. Like, this is really what sports is about. This is what this is really all about. I'm here with my crew. We're out in the quote unquote sunshine, enjoying the day, and playing a game. So I think it's important to to acknowledge that.
And another thing I appreciate about that too is this is season 7, the captain of the series making a mistake in season 7,
valid,
and owning up to it.
Yeah.
His apology at the end scene, he holds out his hand to Rom. I'm sorry. No qualifiers, not the genuine man up apology to Rom. And I love and appreciate that so much.
Yep.
And then of course,
what's a bun? Yeah, okay. Sorry. I stole your thunder. Sorry. So good.
You gotta add the punchline. Right?
Yeah.
Cisco's the best.
So much good in that episode, and I love it so much.
Yeah.
I just had so much baseball on my list.
Yeah, understood. Awesome. How about you, John?
I do have Let He Who Is Without Sin.
Yeah.
The other cuts that I had were Et in Arcadia Ego. I know I'm butchering the Latin.
Yeah.
Rios with the soccer ball.
Yeah.
You brought that up earlier, Morehouse.
Yeah, that was great.
I thought it was great because it wasn't just a throwaway, throw it in there. They actually brought it into the conversation where he's, has the ball and the synth is all fired up. He's like, oh, do you play?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah, I love the game. And it just became this whole big thing. The synth got so excited when he saw the ball. So I thought that was really
I like that because that's a real soccer moment. Like, you play? The synth is like, you play, man? Like kind of testing him a little bit. It's classic.
Right. And that's what happens in sports. You have those types of conversations, and that's how conversations start. That's how friendships sometimes start. So it's great. I also had, I picked one episode, but I wanted to mention Miles and his kayak.
Yes.
Miles and his kayaking.
Perfect.
Because it went over across. I think it was introduced in TNG. And then it continued on through Deep Space Nine. So I thought that was great.
Amazing.
And it just kind of showed his character and how he's constantly trying to tame the rapids. And even after he gets hurt, he kind of wanted to do that. Another Miles was obviously the racquetball. I wanted to, obviously, Julian's sweet racquetball outfit. Wanted to, get a special shout out for that.
And the contrast with O'Brien's outfit.
Oh, yeah.
I just love it.
At the bottom of his closet is just, the dichotomy between those two outfits is just great. I also had the best of both worlds when they talked about Picard and winning the Starfleet Academy marathon as a freshman.
Marathon,
I think the Admiral Hansen says it's the damnedest thing I ever saw, watching him overtake those upperclassmen. I was just like, that's telling about who Picard was. And that's about it.
Okay. I like that kayaking reference. They even use it as a plot point in Inquisition where like Bashir figures out it's fake because he hurt his shoulder playing.
I think it was spring ball.
Yeah, spring ball or something.
I think
it was kayaking.
Right,
which is a great reference. Spring ball has to get called out. Basically racquetball with your hands at some level. I had water polo from
There's a racket in spring ball.
Isn't it like a hand paddle?
No, because remember Nog has her Kira's spring ball racket.
Yeah,
when he's selling all this stuff.
You're right.
Yes,
He's like, "Is this my spring ball racket?"
That's right.
I lost it 2 years ago.
But when they show him playing spring ball, it's more of like a hand glove pad.
Oh, that's right.
Or
yeah,
something.
It was like a glove.
But maybe they mix that up. I don't know.
Different rules, different provinces.
Exactly. Well, it's like designated hitter. I love the spring ball. I had water polo from Exile when Archer throws the ball against the bulkhead and it sticks into the wall.
Yeah.
I love that moment. Gascana, I had Phlox draining 3-pointers in the forwards. I love that. I mentioned the Hydro Scoot earlier. I'm going to give that a shout out again to Captain Freeman on her Hydro Scoot in Crisis Point. She was the Academy champ, at least according to Mariner's script. So, and then
that's canon.
And then the phaser range target practice with Worf and Guinan. I loved.
Yes, that's a good one.
And then so quick. We haven't talked about Sukatse, so that's another one there. Right. Or the Antarian Transstellar Rally. But let me just do my quick soccer, one more rant. So here are the other references to soccer. In Paradise, the kid wants to know the soccer scores when Cisco and O'Brien show up on the planet.
Oh, poor kid.
I know. And they talk about some player who injured his knee. In Dead Stop, Archer talks to Reed about the World Cup, and Reed's like, I don't like football. And then Beverly.
You don't read. You're so boring. He's got no interest. Like, not that you have to like sports, but he has like no interest. And that happens with everything. I don't really like any foods. I don't really like,
There's just not enough stuff blowing up in sports for him.
What do you do, Reed, on your downtime?
So true. Beverly's first love was a young soccer player in The Host. And then we have the soccer ball in the Q scenario from Lower Decks in Veritas when the soccer ball's bouncing around on the chessboard. And then this is what we talked about earlier with John bringing it up. Let he who is without sin. Worf kills a kid with an errant header on a corner kick, which is the worst acting, by the way. He's like,
near the end of the second half with the score tied, my team got a corner kick.
A corner kick. Like, literally, Michael Dorn does not know anything or play soccer.
Hey, he still doesn't know what that means.
But let me tell you why I hate this. So I'm the director of communications for U.S. Soccer. And one of our biggest battles, or not battle, but one of our biggest issues was, of course, concussions in the sport in the late 90s, early 2000s. So here's my favorite show on my escape, and I've got Worf killing a kid with an errant header. And I'm just like, you have got to be kidding me. Star Trek, you're killing me right now. So that one always stuck with me. All right. Incredible in-depth list. We got a lot of awesome stats here, so let's get to it in our regeneration cycle.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
Okay, Jen, recap your awesome list of Trek sports references.
Okay, my number 5 pick was Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 16, If Wishes Were Horses. Cisco meets his baseball hero, Buck Buckeye. My number 4 pick was Enterprise Season 1, Episode 22, Vox Sola. Archer and Trip watched the water polo finals. My number 3 pick was Enterprise Season 1, Episode 10, Fortunate Son, which was a game of low gravity catch. My number 2 pick was Voyager Season 4, Episode 26, Hope and Fear. This was Seven and Janeway playing Velocity. And my number 1 pick was Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 1, Emissary. Cisco using baseball to explain linear time and humanity to the wormhole aliens.
Amazing. 2 from Deep Space Nine, 2 Enterprise, 1 Voyager, 2 baseball picks, and you had 1 made-up sport, Velocity. I love it. John, how about you, man?
All right. Number 5 pick, Episode 21, Enterprise Season 1, Vox Sola. We just talked about that, beer and pretzels. Number 4, Episode 12, Voyager Season 6, Blink of an Eye, the mountain versus lakeside rivalry. Number 3, Episode 7 of Enterprise Season 4, The Forge. Both the basketball in the launch bay at the beginning of the episode, but then I went into my DOA of the hike through the Forge and overcoming obstacles and all sorts of sports analogies. Number 2, Episode 1, Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Emissary. And then my number 1 pick, Episode 8 of Voyager, Season 6, One Small Step, the Yankees in 6 games.
Incredible. So you had 2 Voyager and 2 Enterprise, and then 1 Deep Space Nine. And it looks like you had 5 different sports and 1. No, you had 2 baseball sports. 2 baseball.
2 baseball.
Yeah, 2 baseball and 1 made up. Okay, so for me, my number 5 was past tense from Deep Space Nine, a soccer reference. Round 4 was from Enterprise, Fortunate Son, a football reference. My number 3 was TNG's Parisi Squares from 11001001. Number 2 was Hoverball from Let He Who Is Without Sin from Deep Space Nine. And my number 1 was a baseball pick from Starship Down, Deep Space Nine. So I had 3 from Deep Space Nine, 1 Enterprise, 1 TNG, and I had 2 made-up sports. So let's do the overall stats. We had 3 duplicates. We had 11 real sports picked and 4 Star Trek made-up sports. Those were Velocity, Hoverball, Parisi Squares, and the unknown sport on the Blink of an Eye planet. The sport breakdown was one each from basketball and soccer, 2 water polos, 2 footballs, and 5 baseball, of course, leading the way. And for the episode, this is actually, I guess it's not a surprise when you really think about it. Only 4 incarnations of Trek were represented: TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. There was 1 TNG pick, 3 picks from Voyager, 5 from Enterprise, and 6 from Deep Space Nine. It kind of makes sense that all the sports references kind of come from that era of Trek and not so much the later era. Amazing recaps. But as we do every week, we've hit a temporal distortion. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
The temporal distortions are fracturing space-time throughout the ship. Cause?
Unknown.
Okay, we know the cause, Mr. Tuvok. It's all that amazing feedback that we continue to receive from our listeners here at TrekRanks. And this week's temporal distortion has us going all the way back to episode 46 in our underrated series. This was like 50, 60 episodes ago. Enterprise underrated. We got an amazing voicemail in from Caleb Dorsch, who is at Rogue Moog. I'm going to play that for you right now.
Hello? Please repeat. I can't understand. I still can't understand you. Try modulating the subcarrier wave. Barely. You're going to need to boost the signal.
Any better?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I've finally gotten a hold of you. This is Caleb Dorsch at Rogue Moog on Twitter. Jim, you're never going to believe this. I finished watching Enterprise for the first time, and as soon as I did, the Suliban found out and tried to come for me. Next thing I know, I was whisked away to the 31st century. Agent Daniels said the only way I can return is if I send this transmission to you with my top 5 ranking for episode 46, Enterprise Underrated. My prime directive is simple. I could not pick anything that was in the official top 5 lists that you recorded in your episode. So here it goes. For production design, 5 words and a hashtag. Andorian animatronic antenna are astounding. Hashtag it will grow back, Shran. And I'm highlighting the awesome animatronic antenna of the Andorians, particularly in the episode of Season 4, Episode 13, United, when Shran loses his antenna to Archer. For my number 4 pick, underrated performance, 5 words and a hashtag. Shadow play juxtaposition appropriate for Renee. Hashtag Ezral. The episode is Season 1, Episode 20, Oasis. It is a clear retread of Shadow play, but I love Rene Auberjonois. I love that we got to get him back for one more episode. And I really liked the twist of him being the one to make the holographic village, so to speak. I also like to highlight this episode for the first performance on screen by Annie Wershing. I'm a huge 24 fan, and this was her first performance. She's also known for playing Renee Walker in 24. All right, the Dabo round. 5 words and a hashtag. Great episode with outstanding effects. Hashtag actually nominated for an Emmy. And this episode is not an underrated episode, but I'm specifically highlighting the repair station design in Season 2, Episode 4, Dead Stop. That was just super cool. And I loved the CGI on that entire sequence. I generally feel like I don't hear people talk about the visual effects on Dead Stop as much as they talk about the story and just how good of an episode it is. So I wanted to make sure we could highlight those awesome visual effects. My underrated character, number 2 pick. 5 words and a hashtag. He slowly grew on me. Hashtag and was viciously taken away. The episode is Season 3, Episode 22, The Council. And I'm highlighting Degra. I love this character. I absolutely hated him at first, and throughout the course of the Xindi arc, they just really made him a sympathetic character, and I appreciated him coming full circle and actually vouching for humans in the end. And my number one pick, underrated episode. 5 words in a hashtag. Enterprise's best shuttle pod disaster episode. Hashtag Kushka to you too. And the episode is season 2, episode 13, Dawn. My observation as I was going through my first Enterprise watch is that, man, there are a lot of shuttle pod disasters here. How do I pick the best one? A good shuttle pod disaster story harkens back to the Galileo 7, and I wanted one that required growth for the character throughout. And I feel like Trip really learned a lot about the person he was trapped on the planet with throughout the course of that episode. All right, that is my list. Hopefully this allows me to return back to the proper time. Let me know if you receive this transmission. I'll be waiting to hear from you. Bye, TrekRanks.
All right, I love his picks, especially his shout out to Renee Auberjonois appearing in Enterprise, and his special shout out to Annie Wershing from 24, who played Renee Walker. That was her first ever acting job. So if you're a TV fan, Annie Wershing's been in a ton of stuff, and I like that he highlighted her. Awesome list of Enterprise underrated. So once again, those picks more than enough to clear us from this week's Temporal Distortion. So as always, I want to thank everyone again for all your great responses to the TrekRanks podcast. Please keep your list coming to me at TrekRanks on Twitter so we can retweet them. But we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 sports references or a list from any of our past shows. Give us a call at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP, or you can just DM me on Twitter directly. We can do it that way too if you want to record it. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of TrekRanks, we are returning to everyone's favorite TrekRanks series. At least it's my favorite. It's our Scenes in Trek series. This is our 9th version of Scenes in Trek. And this time we're doing top 5 scenes in a corridor. I mean, so we've done Jeffrey's tubes, we've done cave, sickbay, we've done it all. We're eliminating rooms altogether. It's just top 5 scenes in a corridor. So many great walk and talk scenes in Trek. I can't wait to get into some of these deep cut picks. So Jen and John, if you had to choose one scene in a corridor off the top of your head, what do you got?
Jeez.
Take your time.
Yeah.
John, you got one?
Yeah, I got one. First one that came to my mind is the badass Janeway in Macrocosm, as she's kind of, and it's not maybe one scene, but it's just watching her walking through the corridors.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
with
one.
that, with the huge phaser rifle going after these microcosms. So the macrovirus. So that was the first one I thought.
There's a lot of Janeway in a corridor in Macrocosm.
Yeah.
Jen, you got anything?
Every time I think of a corridor, I'm thinking, no, wait, no, that's a Jeffrey's tube.
I'm giving props to your guests already. So
right.
Well, we stumped Jen for the first time ever. So.
My brain is mush. I'm still thinking about the Gascana match.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so before we wrap it up, a huge thanks to Jen Tift and John Denniston. Great to have you guys both on the show.
I was wondering if you could show me how to access these subspace communications logs.
And we're going to do that right now, Neelix. We're going to go to our Trek subspace communications. So anything you guys want to relay before we depart, Jen?
No, it was a joy to be able to talk about Star Trek and sports, 2 of my favorite things to talk about. And it was a lot of fun talking about it with you guys, 2 really awesome Trek and sports fans. I'm glad to know there's a lot of you guys out there. A
lot of crossovers, so much, and everybody check out the Snap Trek podcast. And John, how about you, man? Glad to have you on, my friend.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun, and yeah, 2 great things to talk about: Star Trek and sports. And you're having it in one conversation. It just doesn't. You just can't get any better than that. Yeah, so I just like to close out with quoting A.G. Robinson from Enterprise First Flight, and I'll just say, "I'll see you out there."
I love it. Outstanding. All right. I want to thank everyone for engaging with us here on episode 104 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
I'm trying to organize a game of hoverball. Would either of you like to join us?
In the rain?
No, on one of the indoor courts.
Indoor hoverball. That's just wrong.
I'll play. Good. That makes one.
Just want to remind everyone again that the entire TrekRanks catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and on your podcast player of choice. Our episodes never get carbon dated, so check out the topics you've missed and maybe just want to listen to again over at TrekRanks.com. And a reminder to check out our friends 5-Year Mission at 5yearmission.net. They're writing a song for every episode of Star Trek, and you won't believe how great their music is. They also have a podcast at the Trek Geeks Network, so seek them out. You won't regret it.
Major, what are you doing for the next few hours?
I'm going off duty, so I thought I'd just relax.
Would you like to go to a baseball game?
I'd love to, sir.
Good. Meet me at Hollow Suite 3 in half an hour.
I'll see you there.
Nerys! You'll need one of those. You can get the hot dogs from Quark.
Hot dogs?
Oh, he'll know.